My name's Karen Carlson. I'm a local. I live in Ocoee. I've lived here in Orlando for the Orlando area for the last 10 years. Prior to that, see, is it coming? I'm originally from the Midwest. I'm from a one-stoplight town in Wisconsin. I got the crazy idea when I graduated college to move to New York and become a TV producer, which I did in my 20s. I was awarded an Emmy for a series I produced with Bill Nye, the Science Guy, and when I was about 30. And I decided, well, that's a good mountain to have climbed, and I retired from television production, mostly because I had a 1-year-old, and it was a very unforgiving lifestyle, and I wanted to do new things, so I thought, I'm kind of a boring person. Why don't I move to a fun place and become more fun? So me and my husband picked up stakes and moved to Orlando 10 years ago in the middle of the housing crisis. And we thought, coming from the New York area, that if we could just have a house with like a garage, that it would be just the pinnacle of luxury, as well as like a washer and dryer in our house and like a little yard. So for us, it was, even though a lot of people in New York are very snobby about New York and, oh, you're moving away, and, you know, for us it was definitely exciting. I want my pictures on the screen so you can see. I have a stepson who's 23, who's a proud Valencia AA recipient, and he is at UCF, and he tells me that he's finishing in December. It's been a sensitive topic because he's taken many years to get through college, and so I'm kind of like, I'm afraid to ask, like, how much longer, you know, but he promises me that the tuition check that we write in the fall is the last one, which is good because I also have an 11-year-old daughter coming up through the school system, a 4-year-old son, and now I have this guy who is our big surprise. So people joke about the gaps between our kids, and I always say, well, it's intentional. I don't want any simultaneous college tuition checks. So I will never have to pay, you know, for 2 kids at once, but I think I'll be paying for college for like 2.5 decades. So there's a trade-off. And if my picture was up there, it's gonna get fixed. I have a picture of myself in my Halloween costume, which is the same every year. It's a colonial woman's dress, and that's because I love history. And that is sort of the basis of this presentation. Whenever I get into a topic, I always want to know the historical perspective. Has it always been this way? What's changed? What's new? What's different? And when I started in financial literacy education 10 years ago, which may seem like a really weird leap from TV production to financial literacy education, it wasn't for me, because the basis of my television career was primarily educational television, science programming, history programming. I went into this local nonprofit in charge, Education Foundation. They wanted somebody to help with their educational materials, and they said, well, do you have a background in finance? Nope, never taken a finance class. Well, are you like a financial plan? You know, no. I said, but I know how to make boring stuff interesting. That's what I've done my entire career. Let me show you the interactive periodic table of elements project that I worked on for the Discovery Channel. So they took my pitch and hired me, and 10 years in, it's been a fabulous career. So this is good while you're still resolving the technical issues. The next slide is to just have a moment of reflection yourselves. There's a handout about financial habits. If you haven't filled it out, they're just 5 or 6 yes or no questions. about financial habits that you may or may not be practicing. So just go through and answer the questions. Be honest. And I'll just give you a moment for that. So I'm assuming it's probably not going to take that long to answer these questions. Just out of curiosity, did anybody answer yes to all of the financial habits questions? Ooh! We have some fellow nerds. I saw 4 hands go up. What about answering no to all of the questions? Oh, wow. That's actually really good. We, at my company, we help people who are sort of in overwhelming credit card debt. And if they qualify for our program, we help them get out of debt over a 5-year period. And we survey them when they start their debt management program, and we survey them 5 years later when they finish. And one of my goals as the person that's crafting education for them all during those 5 years is to transition them to healthy financial behaviors like obviously budgeting, using tools and calculators, having more of a mindset about their financial decision making. So I'm keenly interested in what are the triggers that can move someone from not having a lot of awareness about their finances, not necessarily paying attention, getting themselves in trouble, to being a very mindful person when it comes to just allocating their resources, tracking how they're spending their resources, and using tools and research to make financial decisions. So I use surveys like this to kind of gauge if the education that I'm putting out there is actually influencing habits and behaviors. And over time, I've gotten to learn a little bit better what works, at least with my debt-distressed population. My next slide, I talk about the differences between a household budget in the 70s, that would be my dad and his family, my family that I grew up in, and today, my family. And these are numbers that I looked for this research when I started in this field, like what's fundamentally structurally changed with the American family over decades, and I could not find it. It took me years to find it. I did find it. Elizabeth Warren, she's running for president right now, but before she started her political career, she was a Harvard professor, and she studied bankruptcy longitudinally over the generations, and she studied the household budget. And she wrote a book that said, you know, in the 70s, you would have spent 12% of your household income on food. Today, it's more like 5%. Like, there's actually categories in the budget that have come down. We don't think of it that way. In inflation-adjusted dollars, there's a few categories where they used to command a larger portion of the budget, and now they command a smaller. But the bigger story is that there's other categories that now consume so much of a household budget that it's really tough today compared to previous generations. I don't think that's probably news to anyone, and I'm going to highlight 3 areas that are really taxing the modern family versus the family of the 70s. So one of them's healthcare. So in my parents' day of raising 4 kids in rural Wisconsin, in 2019 dollars, their average annual output for healthcare would have been about $1,000. I mean, can you imagine? And that's everything. That's co-pays and, you know, whatever you contribute to your insurance and out of pocket. Today, it's about $12,000, so 12 times. So, I mean, it's commanding more than 10% of a household budget. After listening to Julio's keynote this morning, I don't think it's any surprise that housing has significantly outpaced inflation. So in 2019 dollars, my parents' generation would have been spending about $5,000 a year for their mortgage or their rent. You know, try to find an apartment or a mortgage at $500 to $600 a month today, which is what that equates to. Today, it's more like $15,000 a year. These are national numbers, so maybe a little less in Orlando, and then car payments. So in 2019 dollars in the 70s, it would have been about $5,000. Now it's about $8,000. So we know that families are crunched because the more you have to allocate to these big categories, the less you have for everything else. Here's some other things that I don't think is going to be news to anybody. We have wage stagnation. We have eroding retirement packages for, in my grandparents' day, at least I can talk about both my grandfathers had high school diplomas and they had good working class jobs and they had defined pensions from their companies and they retired and they had 20 plus years to watch the O.J. Simpson trial, which is what my grandfather did every single day, but whatever. Watch cable TV, go for walks, enjoy life. Those defined retirement plans from companies are few and far between anymore. We have our eroding health benefits. Every year it seems I have to pay more and more of the health cost versus my employer. And then we have shifts in the financial burden. So for example, if you were to see my next slide, before I talk about this, yay! All right, well, first of all, I just have to go back because you missed getting to see me in my Dolly Madison dress here. So there's me and my Katerina and Ralph, and then my Emmy picture. So, all right, moving forward. Didn't miss too much, other than I include the vintage photos of me and my brother with my dad in the 70s, and then me with my family. I have a big family. I have 5, soon to have 6, and my husband stays home. So I'm it. I got to bring home the bacon. I've supported my family for 20 years, and I'm used to it. Little non-traditional in that sense. But actually, from what I've been reading, that my story is becoming more of the story where mom is working. My husband's an immigrant. He's from Russia, which I joke. I'm frugal. I like to save money, and my husband grew up in the Soviet Union, so potatoes and cabbage, he's totally cool with it. We were on a permanent austerity program, and he's basically trained his whole life for my frugal ways. All right, so one thing that really frustrates me, and I imagine it probably frustrates you, is whenever I read stories about student loan forgiveness, like online and whatever, Yahoo News, or even in the New York Times, the comments section always treats the students that are seeking forgiveness as like the biggest deadbeats ever. And why would you take on that debt if you couldn't repay? I mean, the comments are awful. For every one person that seems to have empathy for today's generation, there's like 10 that just talk about how the new generation is not responsible and they're not, I had to walk 10 miles uphill and all that stuff. That's why I think historical context is really important, because as a nation, we've completely shifted the burden of the cost of college from the government to the student. So, for example, both my grandfather served in World War II. They got the big government infusion into funding education was really the GI Bill right after World War II. Now, neither one of my grandfathers decided to use their GI Bill benefits. They were both married and ready to start their families. And at that time, they could get good jobs with their high school diplomas. But had they decided to go to college, it would have been paid for under the GI Bill. Now, my dad, his generation, and my mother, they both did go to college, and the state of Illinois, where they were from, largely funded through subsidized tuition at the public colleges their college education. And if you're from that generation or know people from that generation, you could kind of make it with subsidized public university and a summer job and maybe work study. Like, when I look at tuitions today, and I would exempt Valencia from this, it's kind of like, well, with my summer job, I'll maybe, be able to cover like the first week of tuition. And then as for me, the next generation, it's all about student loans. That's how, and they're not, I don't think that in today's day, when the prime interest rates are like 1%, that a 6.8% student loan is really a great rate. So things have changed. And I got to be mindful here. Okay, the time. I love this chart. I've been showing this chart for years. I go out to a lot of direct connect to UCF campuses at Cocoa Beach, Ocala, out in Claremont, and I do workshops for people that are going to be your students that are going to be teachers that are enrolled in education degree programs. And my workshop is called How to Survive on a Teacher's Salary. And I share all sorts of hacks and tips. But whenever they see this slide, they always scoff because teachers don't even come close to the ranges that are on this slide. So this is the correlation between how long you stay in school, what kind of degrees you get, and your salary, your income, which we all know there's a positive correlation. But the part of the story that I think often gets lost is your immunity from being in a cycle of unemployment goes down every year of school you attend. So the green bar shows the inverse correlation between being unemployed and your level of education that you receive. Anyone that has ever been unemployed for 3 months, 6 months, knows that it is catastrophic to your finances. Being unemployed for 6 months can mean going into debt that would take you 5, even 10 years to pay off. Or even just having a foreclosure incident caused by the fact that you can no longer afford your housing payment sets you back because your credit score is terrible. You have to get a high interest car loan. I mean, the cascading effect of even short-term unemployment is so devastating that just being able to maintain employment, maintain your benefits, maintain your income is very, very important to financial stability and financial wellness. So I really like for students to understand that even if maybe they're in a major where they're not going to, they're not going to get the engineer salary or the programmer salary, if they can just be reliably employed over many, many years, it's going to be very good for their financial health. So now that I've depressed everybody, here's the good news slide. The cost of food's come down. The cost of clothing has come down. The cost of household appliances have come down over the last many decades. That's because of the outsourcing of manufacturing to cheaper countries. So it might not overall be good for the economy, but for the average family, it is good. What else are our students dealing with today that, say, in my father's generation was not a big deal? Exposure to advertisements. I am, besides doing financial literacy education, I'm a digital marketer at my company. I run our websites. There's mostly financial content, but I have to get that content in front of people using my digital marketing skills. And I can tell you that advertising works. And when you consider, studies come out that in a major city, a person will be confronted with 5,000 advertisements in a single day. That's a very huge influence. I often feel like when you're trying to teach people to be prudent and frugal, you're fighting the whole culture. You're fighting that, and you're also fighting this new thing called social comparison. I always joke that nobody checks in at Walmart. I'm checking in at this fancy restaurant. I'm checking in at, these peak experiences. And when you have, the average person has 300 Facebook friends, your students probably have 500. And they're seeing this bombardment of everyone else is doing better than me. Everyone else is having a more exciting life than me. It has an impact. There's a lot of data showing that young people who spend a lot of time on social media, which always makes me laugh because it's like all of them, who's this segment? Young people who spend a lot of time on social media feel more depressed, more anxious, suffer more from self-esteem problems because of this sort of unrealistic lifestyle that's often promoted through this new medium. All right, I want to talk to you about something else that's changed. I feel like every few years a new class of financial predators crops up that you would not think of as a financial predator. And actually, let's see, I didn't put it on here, but I think we all know that some colleges are actually financial predators. Obviously not Valencia. I think any student that you can get here that does not enroll in Full Sail or a culinary institute or a massage therapy program is a major coup, because first of all, you're offering a pathway to a degree that's bankable, that can make money, and you're not, saddling this student with $60,000+ in debt, which is honestly, I think that's probably generous for Full Sail. So who are these other financial predators? Well, we know about credit cards. I just Googled, how much money do credit card companies make annually, and the statistic I found was for 2016, and it was $170 billion for 1 year in interest and fees. And then I said, well, I wonder how much that is divided by the adult population of the United States. And it's about $700 per adult, so it's massive. We know automobile lenders, once the housing market got regulated after the housing crisis, all of the predatory lenders moved over to the automobile industry, and there's been a skyrocketing in subprime lending for cars. And let's be honest, a car is a necessity, especially here, especially for our students. We know about issues that have happened in the mortgage industry. Gyms. How many times do you hear your students talk about, oh, I didn't understand the contract, I signed up, and, oh, it's a 2-year contract, and they can't afford it. And it's almost impossible to get out of these. Cell phone contracts. This one's a huge one. So there's horrible cell phone contracts out there where you just can't get out of it. You're in for 2 years. The student realizes 2 or 3 months in they can't afford it. They stop paying. Their credit score is destroyed over a phone. Tax preparers. You'll see they have these refund advance loans that now all of these tax preparers are giving out. I see them. I work over on Kirkman, where, some big franchise is getting 10% out of, someone's tax return that really can't afford to give it up. Prepaid cards, huge. There's been a boom in prepaid cards. So people that maybe don't qualify for a credit card, maybe they don't have a bank account, and they want to buy stuff online because nowadays that's how you have to buy a lot of things or make online payments will get these prepaid cards with really high fees. I bring this up because these are all issues that your students are dealing with. All right, so really quickly, I want a show of hands. Or you could shout it out. Percent of Americans that have less than $1,000 saved for retirement. What do you think? All right, it's actually only 33. It's not that bad. Percent Social Security is projected to be cut by 2035. I figure, that's, of course, when I'll be retiring, there'll be nothing left. But it's actually only 25%, so, oh well. Next. Percent of Americans who carry credit card debt from month to month. So this one's really interesting. I've dug a lot into this. Everybody always overestimates this number, and it's not exactly for reasons you would think. Only 70 to 80% of Americans have a credit card because 20% just don't plain qualify, so we have to get rid of those people. So of the 70-ish% that have a credit card, about half are carrying a balance from month to month. I've been tracking this number for 10 years. It doesn't really change. Might go up a little bit depending on the bigger economic reality, but it's 38% is a little more than a third. It's not good. The reason why everybody overestimates it, though, is that the credit card companies actually try to promote the notion that everybody has credit card debt, so it's sort of normalized in society. You always see the headlines like average credit card debt per household, $15,000. If you dig into the data, it's average credit card debt for people who carry credit card debt is $15,000. It's not as bad as we might think. All right, so this one's one of my favorites. Percent of college students who have not predicted the total money they need to graduate. You are so close, 75%. When I go and do my How to Survive on a Teacher's Salary workshops, almost no one has ever, they kind of know what's going on for that semester, but that's it. There's not a lot of thinking from one semester to the next. And then the percent of students who have never predicted their future student loan payment is fairly the same. Okay, so now we're getting in, and I think I can still do this all by noon. So what do we do? That's the big, now we've set the context. When I started hunting in this field for financial literacy curriculums, because my company, we do a lot of workshops. We work with Habitat for Humanity, Goodwill, local colleges, the high schools, and, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. What's out there? And what I found was a lot of stuff like how to calculate compound interest. Oh, let's play the stock market game. Almost all the educational materials that I kept coming across, even ones that nonprofits like my company were promoting, were very investor focused. And then when I started going to financial literacy conferences, I noticed that the people that fund all of this curriculum and put it out there, and it's very nice of them, and it's all free, and community organizations can use it. It's all investment banks and Bank of America Foundation and Chase Foundation, and so they're really creating materials for people like them. I noticed we've been working with Habitat for Humanity for 15 years, and when I started my job, I looked at the materials that we were using. And our Habitat people, it's mostly women. They work like 3 jobs. They're getting a house. It's really hard. They have low levels of literacy in general. And all the scenarios in the discussion topics were like nuclear families with stay-at-home moms and fights between couples about whether to buy like a new stereo or something. Totally inappropriate for the people that need financial literacy education most. So even today, when you go to Jumpstart Coalition for Financial Literacy Education, which is sort of a big national group that serves like K to 12 plus college. It's very hard to find financial literacy materials dealing with student loans, which I find bewildering. I think that we need to really educate our students about student loans, credit cards, auto loans, goal setting and behavior tracking, and pitfalls. So this is something that I think is probably not big surprise. We field over 100,000 phone calls a year from the debt distressed at my company. We're a national nonprofit that helps people learn how to budget. You can't judge. It's the most important thing, I think, to set the groundwork for getting your students to feel open to share their problems. This is just goes back to that other slide. Actually, this goes to a slide in my keynote later. The biggest piece of financial advice, the biggest thing that you can impart to your students is to stay in school. I don't think I need to say more about that. Financial distress, and again, I think you guys know this, is death by 1,000 cuts. Benjamin Franklin actually said it really well. I think it was small leaks sink big ships, something like that. It's a lot of little things that pile up and really bring you down and probably contribute to students dropping out and not being able to complete their program. So, how many of you have had a student that gets their financial aid money, they get their tuition covered, and then they get this chunk? And it's supposed to last them the whole semester. But then, like, they've never had several $1,000s sitting in a bank account before, and a concert comes up, and they really want to go. They've never been able to do this kind of thing. I actually had lunch 2 weeks ago with a young man. He told me this story. He's from Paramore, first generation, African-American student, really difficult situation. And he said, he went to Tallahassee Community College, and he said, I blew so much money on concerts, and I knew it was a bad decision, but I was 18, and I never, ever been able to do stuff like this before. This is where the no judgment comes in. Because a lot of the people, again, that write the financial literacy curriculums at these foundations and stuff will say, well, that was really irrational behavior. And, well, irrational to you based on your life experience. But for a lot of people that have never had access to money, couple thousand, the average American adult doesn't have $2,000 that's working in their bank account. Every year the data comes out, 50% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency. So these, kids that have no experience with money have a few $1,000s, and it happens. So I think we have to acknowledge that it happens, but also in the beginning, in your student success first semester courses, you gotta teach kids how to budget whatever they have to last till the end of the semester. And if it's not, to come up with a plan to mitigate that, whether it's figuring out some way to cut expenses or a job, whatever. It's super important to being able to stick it out to the next semester. So budgeting is, and I'm going to talk about this in the keynote, budgeting is ground zero for financial health. It's a no-brainer, but there's a lot of tools out there that can help people budget. Online tools, apps. I have several that I really like that, again, I'll cover in the keynote. They're free. I'm a huge advocate of using tools. So this is one of my favorite pieces of advice. Again, super practical. When I'm out doing workshops, I hear it so often, and sometimes it'll be like, my grandma needed a new truck, and this 17 had maybe had a credit card for a year, and credit score was good enough, and grandma, even without my knowledge, put me on her loan. This happens a lot. I think that this is the fastest way to ruin your credit score. It happens a lot amongst financially vulnerable families, friend groups. A lot of times students don't understand when they co-sign that they are responsible for 100% of the payment when they co-sign. And this is a little tough love, and I know it's not possible for everybody, but if the bank does not approve, if the professional at the bank is not approving this person for a loan, you're not qualified to approve them for a loan either. Just please try not to co-sign. Mind your cell phone costs. All right, well, we have a few minutes, really quick. Mind your cell phone costs. I listen to the calls that come into our call center, and people living on fixed incomes are spending easily 10 plus 15% of their income on their phone. And it's not because they're the type of people that need to have the latest and greatest iPhone 10. It's more like, well, my son needed a phone and I really want to be able to contact him. And then my mom is it's like love. And then you have, a veteran on a disabled veteran on a fixed income is paying for like everybody's phone in the family and spending $400 a month on a phone. There's lots of ways to have a smartphone and not have it cost you an arm and a leg. And I really endorse giving your students, especially in your, success first semester courses, practical advice on how to minimize expense in this category. You can get a used phone. There's plans for $30 to $45 a month. You can have a smartphone. Use Wi-Fi. You won't get a lot of data, but Wi-Fi, you guys have Wi-Fi on campus. You don't need to be paying for data when Wi-Fi is available. And then another piece of advice that I really think is important, if you can't afford the contract, break the contract. Don't put your tuition at risk. Don't put your food, your housing. Just break the contract. They're not going to sue you. You'll just, yes, it'll affect your credit score, but, okay, we have just 3 minutes. Let's see. I'll be judicious. All right, we'll go slideless. I have found that students are very interested in their credit score. And the credit score is one of those things that most people don't really understand. So any kind of help you can give in that area, very high interest and tons of information online. I highly recommend Credit Karma. You do not have to pay to monitor your credit. You can do it for free with Credit Karma. They work with TransUnion. Another piece of advice for your students, don't pay for free stuff. So get a water bottle. Don't buy water. Don't pay for a bank account. Find an affinity bank account. I'm sure Valencia has a relationship with, I'm not sure if it's maybe Additions Financial or a student account. Just look into it. $10 a month for 10 years, it adds up. You don't need to pay for it. Don't need to pay for credit monitoring, like I said. Prepaid cards, avoid those. Be creative. What kind of entertainment can you get for free? Just on the Valencia website, I saw like tons of stuff, which maybe there's admissions, but maybe it's low cost. Use Wi-Fi instead of cell phone data. More advice, beware of contracts, mobile phones, gym memberships, satellite, cable TV, online subscriptions. I always like to recontextualize contracts. Don't promise away your future income before you have earned it. No contracts. Stay away if you can. And then my final 2 slides. So the big ideas, these were all very practical, sort of ran through a lot of really practical advice for the Valencia student. But the big ideas are to have a plan and spend within the plan, to align your daily habits with your larger goals, and I'm going to talk a lot about that in my keynote, and to pay attention with tracking tools. Tons of apps and tools now that will send you text messages and tell you you overspent on food this week, believe it or not. These tools are like having a financial coach monitor your behavior and give you feedback, kind of like a Fitbit for free. Highly recommend those. And finally, I believe that money is dream fuel. Why do I do this? What motivates me? Why do I go out and do workshops? Because having some financial security means that you can be ready for opportunities. You don't know when they're going to happen. They don't happen every day. But you want to be ready for them. And you will be more ready for the great opportunity around the corner if you have some control over your financial situation. So that's not your father's financial literacy. I don't know if there's any questions. I think we have 0 minutes left. You've been a great audience.